Climate change and its devastating effects are being felt around the world, and a new report, Anatomy of a Silent Crisis, charts its human impact. It's calculated to have led to 300,000 deaths and affects 300 million people, mostly in developing countries. The new report was launched in London by Kofi Annan, President of the Global Humanitarian Forum.
It is an attempt to capture the impact of climate change on human life around the world. It is happening today. It's not something waiting to happen. And it helps underline that climate change is not a distant threat, nor simply an environmental crisis, but is having real severe impact on millions of people around the globe.
The report warns that by 2030, the number seriously affected through the loss of their homes, natural disasters, disease and malnutrition could reach 600 million people.
The picture emerging is alarming and demands attention and action. The report's findings indicate that lives of hundreds of millions of people are permanently or temporarily affected by climate change. These figures are set to increase sharply as the extreme weather disasters, desertification, rising water levels are all exacerbated by climate change. This will have serious political, security implications, not just for the countries directly affected, but for all of us. And that is why I have always dubbed climate change as an all-encompassing threat.
He says the financial cost of climate change is nearly £80 billion each year, most of which affects the poorest people in the world.
It is a cost which falls on those least responsible for climate change and without the resources to cope. It is not the poor of the world who are polluting our atmosphere. The 50 least developed countries contribute less than 1% of global carbon emissions. And yet it is the poorest on our planet who are being the first hit and the worst hit by changes in our climate. And I think this is a serious concern.
He called this a silent crisis for those suffering that needed to be addressed by December's climate change conference in Copenhagen.
It is time we gave them voice. It is time we focused on their issues. That is why the Global Humanitarian Forum, along with many other organizations around the world, including Oxfam that is here with us and many other NGOs, is calling for a fair, global and binding agreement at Copenhagen. We are demanding that climate justice be at the heart of any agreement if any agreement to succeed Kyoto Protocol.
He then called on developed countries to take a lead in tackling the crisis and to pass on their expertise and funding to help poorer nations.
Those businesses and nations primarily responsible for the emissions causing climate change to take the lead in tackling it. And that expertise, funds, should also be readily made available by countries with capacity, by the richer countries, to help poor nations protect their people, adapt to the climate change already underway, and grow their economies in a sustainable manner.
It's also felt that nations must move towards carbon-neutral economies.
We have the chance to move from carbon-based economies to those which can grow in a sustainable way. Climate change strategies offer a chance for developing nations to leapfrog towards efficient, renewable energies, creating jobs and raising living standards. They could avoid the mistakes of others. Indeed, with the right investment and expert help, the developing world is ideally pleased to develop renewable sources such as solar, thermal power to meet worldwide concerns about security energy security.
Kofi Annan believes that by recognising our common humanity and working together, we can provide what he termed climate justice to safeguard the world for future generations.